Hey y'all, Jim here with Sunrise Farm. Thanks so much for stopping by. Behind me you can see part of my market garden, my farm. And I thought I would take you on a quick journey and show you the aftermath of Tropical Storm Debby. Our rain down here in the south where I live started around Monday afternoon, evening. It rained initially for 30 hours straight. I kid you not, 30 hours straight. Now, it wasn't like all massive storms and heavy rain, but it consistently rained without a break for 30 hours straight. Then we went into cycles of hard rain and storms and just downburst and high winds. It even through last night. So basically we experienced 3.5 days of the effects of Debby down here in the south. I'm going to show you what my farm, what it looks like right now, wet wise, and talk about the pros and cons and how my crops did that are currently in the ground, but also kind of give you a quick glimpse of all the things that I was trying to prep to put in the ground that are kind of up in the air now, what's going to happen. So let me go ahead and take you down and show you the farm. Probably hear my sloshing feet, and I don't know if the picture will pick it up that well, but here, several inches of water on the ground. Take a look at some of my jalapeno pepper plants have blown over. They looking pretty bad. I think they got drowned out. Here's my row of red snapper tomatoes that were doing beautifully, and for the most part have stood up. This very end one down here, it was the very first plant to put on fruit, is looking very rough and very peaked. I'm beginning to wonder if it didn't get some kind of disease, or if it's water drowned out, and or if it'll come back. I don't know. Some of my tomatoes I already had to pop off. None of them have turned or are turning yet, but some of them I've already had to pop off because they got too much water and split and cracked, which is obviously a byproduct of so much water and rain. I see we have a couple down here that somehow broke free from their trellising and have laid over on the ground. So far, that looks fixable. Looks like I can stand them back up and they'll recover. But as you can clearly see, there's a lot of water in here, and if it's standing this much, and I have ground that doesn't really hold water that bad, then you know it's pretty rough. I had a row of zinnias and some Cosmo in there. It's all blown over and shot. It don't look like there is a comeback to it. My okra's doing just fine. This was one of the areas I had prepped for some of the plants that I was talking about, and I just took a misstep and sunk down about 8 inches. Praise the Lord for wearing boots. Here's my green beans that are not really doing that great, to be honest with you. And they weren't doing that great before the storm. They are putting on a few beans, but not what you want to see. The storm certainly didn't help them. I have this row that was almost done anyway of market more cucumbers. They're looking pretty sad. A few eggplants still up and kicking. It didn't seem to affect the cayenne peppers at all. Like I said, you can see more water in this garden plot here. And then down here, the okra It's doing pretty decent. I had started planting a few cucumbers. Some of them are trying to hold on. All this water, these Marglobe tomatoes that are over here on this trellis, were looking outstanding. Now, not so much. Praying for drier weather and praying that these will recover. Now, the one thing that's not going to recover is I had planted a double row of zucchini and a double row of squash on my 50-foot rows here. I have 2 rows right here. Not that you can hardly tell from this video with all the water in there. And look how fast that grass grew back with that rainstorm we've had. You can see all that green in the middle of these rows. Well, that wasn't there, let's say a week ago. That rain has done a number, and I've lost all of these. These were transplanted several days before the storm, probably 4 or 5 days before the storm. Unfortunately, that's a loss. I also have more ready to, or not ready to go, but more on the way in my pots or my grow out trays. So here's where I had started doing some ground prep. Clearly that's a muddy mess at the moment. And unfortunately I was trying to do some ground prep all through here and in one of my other plots. Now, and I'll show you my grow out trays in a minute. Now my problem is going to be, when will the water subside and when will the rain subside? Honestly, the storm has passed us, but the rain is not. We have rain potential for the next 7 to 10 days. Here where my cherry tomatoes still are, I guess, but they have taken a major beating and abuse, and they're not looking too smooth at the moment. So I don't know if they'll recover. I was getting ready to plant some more anyway, but these are not looking that good. And then you can see a little friend right there who's not helping the matter. Right, that's a tomato hornworm. Now this is heartbreaking and a sad state of affairs. You can't even hardly tell that this is where all my thriving pepper plants were. Not a one looks any good right now. And look at all of this weed and grass growth. It wasn't like this 5-6 days ago. Wow, did the weeds and grass grow up fast with that kind of rain. Oh, this is a little heartbreaking. Nah, I take that back. It's a lot heartbreaking. I don't know if my peppers will recover. I mean, a couple of them look dead, but they aren't dead yet. But man, I can't even hardly walk through here. The ground is so soft and saturated. Even that thing is just, I mean, it looks good on the camera, but that thing is so soft. Not good. Not good at all. Well, it's all in God's hands, and only time will tell, but can you see how much water? My ground, where these peppers are, most of my ground in this market garden, actually slopes a little bit towards the wood line, but you can see just how much standing water is in there. Heartbreaking. And right here is where I was experimenting with a different variety of zucchini. The plants don't look too devastated yet, but you can see all this standing water. And then when you look down through the zucchini plants, you can see all the weed growth. That wasn't there about 7 days ago either. I had these things weeded out pretty good. Man, you gotta love the after effects of all this water. Partly because of the low-lying area, and partly because this ground is not that good in this general area. is why I'm putting these 12 consecutive raised beds in. Yes, I know I've mentioned it in other videos. And this fall, I'll be getting back to it for sure, because next spring we need these things up and running, both to compensate for the ground and to compensate for low-lying. Now, other than the fact I haven't weed eated in between the sweet potatoes are actually looking very nice. They're thriving. Honestly, I'd have probably already been harvesting them if it hadn't been for this storm, because this is about the right time, and I've checked on them and they're right. They're ready to go. But I'm going to leave them to dry out a little bit. They're on slightly raised mounds, so I don't think the water's done too much damage to them. So, and then on out there is where I was trying to start some more ground prep, but such is life. This is what you have to deal with when you're trying to do farming. Doesn't all work in your favor sometimes. I mean, we needed the rain for the garden, but I think we got a little more than we needed. Grand total, it seems we got around 14 inches of rain. So you can imagine how not good that is. Well, let me take you over to show you my seed table and everything I got going on there, because we're at the crossover point now where we're doing our final run on our spring summer crops and crossing over into our fall crops. So here we are at my backside of my shop, my seed starting table. I start my seeds inside my shop, and then I put them out here on this table, and I've got a couple of others. So this rain, like I said, I lost all that zucchini and squash that I had planted. I put it in 4 or 5 days prior to the storm, not fully realizing the extent of the storm we were going to receive. It was already past time for them to be in the ground because of previous rain. It made it difficult to get the ground prepped. So I tried to get them in. Unfortunately, I lost all of those. That was about 300 total plants that I lost, but some of that was due to this storm. Some of that was due to just being in the trays too long. But I do have 2 more trays of zucchini. This is one of them right here. I'll show you the others. I also have 2 trays of squash that I just started about 2 weeks ago, so I've got about 1 more week before I start putting them in the ground. That's why I really need the ground to dry out and it to stop raining on me, so I can get the ground re-prepped and prepped more, because I'm going to have to go back through what I already planted with that zucchini and squash. I'm just going to pull the water lines back, re-till it real quick, and then go again. Back over there, I have some butternut squash that has been too long on the tray and should be in the ground already. Again, ground prep issues, not being able to get at it due to previous rains and then this massive storm. I have a whole tray of Brussels sprouts. Now they're still looking pretty good for the most part. They're ready to go in the ground as well. Right now they're okay, so I think I'm fine with that. Back here I have some cherry tomatoes. I've been up potting some, but I have cherry tomatoes to go back in those that 1 row of cherry tomatoes that I showed you, plus I'm probably going to do an additional row to finish out the year with. They grow pretty quick anyway. These are some tomatoes that I tried to salvage. They were the other half of this tray here. They're called Super Choice. They're a slicer. Yes, they're an indeterminate slicer, and I know that they won't come to full fruition very long anyway before the frost comes. That's okay. I like this tomato. It's a nice variety. It's a good heirloom variety. I like the way it looks. My customers like the way it presents itself. So I'm just want to try to get as many as I can out of them to finish the season. After up potting these out of that tray, right now they're not looking too healthy, but I believe that they'll come back in a couple of days. Tomatoes are, generally speaking, fairly resilient, especially with the way you can plant them as deep as you want, and roots will continue to form on them, because all those little hairs you see on tomatoes on their stems, that actually will become roots if they're left in the ground, if they're in the ground rather. Then I have a tray back here of cauliflower. Now I don't have too many survive out of it. That's not a weather issue. That's a bug issue. I don't know what's eating the tops off of my cauliflower. Right next to it I have two different varieties, a red and a green short day kind of cabbage, small headed short day kind of cabbage. The bugs are doing a little bit of damage to them too, and they're just about ready to go in the ground. Right here, getting some water in this tray that I have is my final planting of okra. They're doing quite well, so I'm not really worried about them. And then let me show you what else I got going on both behind you here and in my shop, and just, you know, show you these are all, well, not all, obviously the cauliflower, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts are fall plants, but all the rest are spring summer crops for us. And we get to basically plant them twice, or succession plant them through the year, like zucchini, squash, and cucumbers. Tomatoes we can plant 2, even 3 times if it's a determinate type. And this is not even my final start of zucchini. My final start of zucchini will happen next week. Around the 15th of August is when I do my final start of squash zucchini. I just seeded my final seeding of cucumber yesterday, so we got that going on. And then I've got so many more trays that I'm starting out now because we got so many fall plants to go in the ground too. But let me show you the other stuff. So right here are some more of those same super choice tomatoes that I up potted yesterday. All of them are looking a little peaked, but I do believe they'll survive. I up potted 12 Brussels sprouts because I'll be starting to sell fall plants and various plants at my market. And so Brussels sprouts I'll sell. I'll let these grow out for a week, and then probably starting next Saturday I'll start selling plants. Down here are some mostly cherry tomatoes, but some super choice tomatoes that I had already up potted previously out of that one tray I showed you, and they're coming along pretty good. In fact, this one, so this is a cherry tomato, and I actually up potted it 2 weeks ago. Almost 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago. So anytime I do plants, I have my original tag that tells me when I started the seed, and then I generally will put my up potting tag on it or date on it if I do an up potting of any kind. Well, these I had to because I couldn't get ground prep fast enough, with all the sogginess. That was again prior to the storm. Now I don't know how many days it's going to take to dry out. But as you can see, this plant is doing just fine. So I just need to get it in the ground and she'll be ready to go. I've got several just like it. One of the things that I'll say about the way I start seed trays, and I'm sure this is generally speaking true for everybody, especially if they're doing it for any type of market garden or living, even a partial living, is you always start way more than you need. And when I say way more, let's just say I want 200 of something. Well, I'll start it in my 242 tray and I'll have 40 extra. Why do you have 40 extra? Because inevitably you're going to have germination issues of some sort. Inevitably you're going to lose some plants due to whatever, disease, time, bugs, other causes. So you always want to make sure you have more than you need so that you can plant what you desire to plant. Hopefully that made sense. You might not can see them too good, but down on the ground here, I had up potted some 1 gallon pots of both tomatoes and a few spaghetti squash and a couple of butternuts I had just to try to get them to be a little more consistent, a little more sturdy. And then over here, this is the where I showed you that I had already planted about almost 30 cucumber plants, and about half of them look like they're wanting to survive. That's where these came from, out of this tray. This tray got real leggy on me. Now, a lot of plants, cucumbers is one of them, you can actually bury them a fair bit deeper to stabilize them, and they'll normally catch up and still be fine, because they'll develop little fine roots on their stems too. Not quite like a tomato, but very similar. I don't know how many of these I'm going to be able to salvage or not. I'm praying that I can salvage a bunch of them, because I need them, but only time will tell. Depends on how fast I can get the ground to dry out and cooperate a little bit, so I can put them in the ground. I don't want to put them in sopping wet. So then over here I've got that tray of cucumbers that we just seeded. Over here is the other one of the zucchini trays I told you I just started, and then over here is one of the trays of squash I told you I just started. And that's not all though. And yes, those cucumbers need some water, and they're up next to my tray. I generally will bottom feed when they get to that height, or get to that age and height for that matter. All right, so down there I have 2 trays of broccoli and 1 tray of big cabbage, which is called Copenhagen. For the most part, they're getting a little leggy on me, but for the most part, they're doing okay. I wouldn't say they were great, but they're doing okay. What I will say, though, is that, especially when you see that tray back there, and well, you can't see the whole tray maybe in this shot, but those 2 trays of broccoli are green magic broccoli. At least my early experience is the germination rate on those things is phenomenal. I had well into the high 90s on germination rate, so they're very good. And as you can see right here, I've got 8 trays already stacked, already filled with my seed starting mix. They were moistened down yesterday, and we're going to be hot and heavy into planting more fall seeds. Lettuce, I'm going to do a pickling cucumber, Swiss chard, top bunch collards. So a lot more going on there. And yes, my shop is a hot mess. What we call in the South a very hot mess. And down here, there's some on the other side of my saw, but these are all where I up potted my Hosinator tomatoes. I wasn't wanting to do that. It's kind of a waste of, not necessarily a waste, but it takes some time, it takes some material. And I didn't really want to do it. I wanted them in the ground, but as I've already showed you and told you, that was impossible. I mean, they should have been in the ground about a week ago was their actual due date to be in the ground. If I had the ground prepped, it'd have been no problem. But here you are, you got to do what you can. Well, all right, folks. Now you see kind of the ramifications of what Debbie's done here down on our farm. Some of this legginess in some of these plants, yes, was due to the overall heat, but a lot of it's due to the fact I couldn't get it in the ground when it was ready. That's a huge problem, obviously. Kind of sort of one of those minuscule drawbacks to transplanting all of these plants. But I still prefer to transplant. I prefer the consistency of it. I prefer to have as healthy plants as possible going into the ground. If I'd have had seed in the ground right now, all it would have done is drown and rot anyway. So, speaking of which, I actually know of another farm about 30 or 40 minutes from my house. They lost all of their crops. Lost them all. I feel so bad for them, and I feel bad for anybody that lost their garden, but I feel especially bad for farmers who lost crops and lost a living. If they have employees, that's going to be very tough. They got equipment payments, again, that's going to be tough. So I feel for them. I really do. it's just devastating when you go through, and and it's bound to happen eventually to everybody. But when you go through bad weather conditions or some other unforeseen, let's just say, dramatic event to the farm, it just wreaks havoc, and it wreaks havoc on a timeline too, down the line. Because it's not as if we can put seeds in the ground and get fruit on it tomorrow. Most things take a minimum of 60 days. Tomatoes and some of the like Brussels sprouts and things like that, they'll take up to 90 days in some cases. So yeah, it's a it's a thing. So to all those folks out there that are gardening, that are doing market farms and other style farming for a living, you have my prayers. If you happen to live in my area around Walterboro, South Carolina, if there's some way I can help you and you happen to see this video, please reach out to me and let me know. Maybe I can give you a few plants. I don't know. Well, I don't know what I can do, but maybe I can do something. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching this video. As always, you are a tremendous blessing to me. I am so just encouraged by y'all's comments and just the fact that you watch this video. So thank you so much. Take care. God bless you. Until we meet again, have an amazing day in the Lord.